Okay, let's dive right into this. When we think of space travel, we picture cutting-edge labs, supercomputers, the absolute peak of modern science. But what if I told you the instructions for one of today's biggest space achievements were actually written down centuries ago? First things first, let's ground ourselves in something very recent, a huge moment of scientific victory that many of us watched live. So, back in 2023, the world was glued to their screens as India's Chandrayaan mission pulled off a historic soft landing on the lunar South Pole. I mean, this was a massive triumph of engineering, pinpoint precision, and all our modern tech. Just an incredible accomplishment. Now, keep that image of modern rocket science in your head, because the source material we're digging into today asks a really wild question. What if the detailed technical blueprint for that exact mission was actually written down more than 700 years ago? And that question leads us to a pretty mysterious ancient text, and the legendary figure who supposedly wrote it all down. At the very heart of this story is Siddhar Bogar. He's this legendary figure from the ancient Tamil Siddhar tradition, kind of seen as a master of both science and mysticism. He's credited with this enormous text, over 7,000 verses, covering everything from medicine to yoga, and, as our source claims, maybe even space travel. And that is the core claim right there. The source material we're looking at proposes that a part of this ancient work, the Bogar 7000, isn't just poetry. It's a literal step-by-step guide for building a machine to fly to the moon. Bogar kicks things off with this verse, which translates to something like, "I've performed countless wonders, but the Kathati technique is the technique of all techniques." Now, Kathati literally means kite, but, and this is a huge but, the source argues Bogar was not talking about a simple toy you fly in a park. He was describing a complex, flying machine, a spacecraft. So how in the world does an ancient kite line up with a modern lunar lander? Well, let's get into it. We're going to decode this by looking at the direct comparisons the source draws between Bogar's text and the Chandrayaan mission. Okay, this is where the comparison gets uncannily specific. Bogar's verse talks about a craft made of circles. He mentions a long circle and an inner circle. The source says, hey, this isn't just poetry. It's a perfect description of Chandrayaan's two-module design. You've got the long propulsion module carrying the inner lander module. And just so we're all on the same page, the propulsion module is basically the workhorse. It's the part that does all the heavy lifting, carrying the lander from Earth's orbit all the way to the moon's orbit before it finally separates. And the mechanical parallels are just as specific, if not more so. Bogar's verse mentions joints or anklets, which the source says matches up with the precise motors that help steer the craft. He describes a stable, subtle mechanism, which is interpreted as the super powerful, super-cooled cryogenic engine. And maybe the most poetic part, he writes about something being protected like the yolk inside an egg. I mean, what a perfect metaphor for the lander's own engine system, right? Tucked away safely inside the main craft. The parallels don't just stop at the hardware either. The source claims the entire mission sequence is laid out. Step 1, launch. Strike the rope as it flies with force. Step 2, get into orbit. The kite flies up to the moon's lunar orbit. Step 3, slow down, which is absolutely crucial for landing, when the rope is pulled or shortened. And finally, the nail-biter, the soft landing. The kite will descend slowly. It's basically a step-by-step guide to a lunar mission from 700 years ago. But the source's claim actually goes beyond just the technology. It suggests there's a direct human link between this ancient knowledge and the brilliant people who made India's modern moonshot a reality. So the source we're looking at puts forward this really fascinating argument that there's a direct cultural, maybe even an intellectual lineage connecting this ancient Tamil scientific text to the modern scientists leading India's space program today. The source actually points to the architects of India's lunar success. We're talking key directors of the Chandrayaan missions like Kailasavadu Stephen and Vermouth Vale. The argument it makes is that it's no mere coincidence that these absolute leaders in space science shared this specific Tamil heritage. Now, and I'm presenting this directly from our source material here, the text makes a pretty bold suggestion. It says their success is built on a foundation of what it calls the brain of Tamil genetics, proposing this link between their incredible achievements and a deep-rooted scientific heritage, possibly one that started with figures like Siddhar Bogar. So, after going through all that, what are we supposed to make of these incredible claims? Let's try to wrap our heads around it. I mean, when you lay it all out, the parallels are pretty mind-blowing. The source draws this straight line from an ancient verse to a modern spacecraft's design, from poetic descriptions of how it works to specific engine types, and from this metaphorical journey of a kite to the real orbital mechanics of a soft lunar landing. It's a lot.
And that really just leaves us with the big question, right? What are we looking at here? Is this proof of some lost ancient science that was way more advanced than we ever imagined? Or is it a beautiful prophetic poem whose metaphors just happen to line up perfectly with technologies centuries down the road? Or is it all just a series of really, really stunning coincidences? Now that is something to think about.